Fluffy's escape to a new beginning. In a cozy little burrow, nestled deep in a sunny meadow, lived a baby rabbit named Fluffy. His fur was as soft as the clouds and his eyes sparkled like tiny brown gems, but happiness rarely visited his heart. Fluffy lived with his foster parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hopper, who had once welcomed him when he was just a tiny kid. Yet, instead of showering him with love, they were cold and unkind, treating him with cruelty and neglect. Fluffy's days felt as grey as stormy skies. His tummy often rumbled with hunger because Mr. and Mrs. Hopper would forget, or perhaps choose, not to feed him. His food bowl, always empty, became a heartbreaking reminder of how forgotten he was. When Fluffy cried out, hoping to be seen or heard, he was met not with comfort, but with scolding. "Stop your whining, Fluffy," they barked, locking him away in his tiny, dark room. Fluffy spent most of his time wishing for the simple joys of life, like playing tag in the meadow with the other rabbit kids or chasing fluttering butterflies. But his foster parents never allowed it. "The meadow is dangerous," they chided cruelly. "You could get hurt or lost. Just stay inside where you belong." Though their words sounded like concern, they were nothing but harsh lies. Deep down, Fluffy knew they simply didn't care. In Fluffy's little world, toys were treasures, and he had very few. His favorite was a small, stuffed carrot, warm but loved dearly. Yet, even this small joy was taken from him when he made tiny mistakes like spilling a drop of water or leaving a speck of dirt on the floor. "You're such a messy little thing," Mrs. Hopper would snap as she hid the carrot away, leaving Fluffy tearful and broken-hearted. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks melted into months. Fluffy's bright eyes dimmed with sadness, and he spent his time curled up in a ball, whispering quiet questions to himself. "Why don't they love me? What did I do wrong?" His little heart ached, a heavy, lonely ache, and he wondered if this was how all rabbits felt. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks melted into months. Fluffy's bright eyes dimmed with sadness, and he spent his time curled up in a ball, whispering quiet questions to himself. One day, Mr. and Mrs. Hopper left the burrow, shutting the door with a loud bang. Hunger gnawed at Fluffy's tummy like an unwelcome guest, but there was nothing to eat. He searched every corner of the burrow, peering into cracks and crannies, but the cupboards echoed with emptiness. Tears welled in his eyes, and for the first time, he thought of giving up. That's when he heard it, a soft rustling sound coming from outside. It was faint, like the little tune of leaves dancing in the wind. Curiosity tipped his ears forward. Fluffy hopped to the entrance of the burrow and peeked out into the golden light of the meadow. There, perched on a sturdy rock, was an old owl, her feathers dappled brown and white, with kind eyes that twinkled like stars in the night sky. "Hello, little one," she said in a warm, deep voice that made Fluffy's heart feel lighter. "Why are you so sad?" At first, Fluffy hesitated. But the owl's gentle gaze and soothing words made him feel safe, something he hadn't felt in such a long time. Slowly, he poured out his heart to her, speaking of all the hunger, the loneliness, and the endless scolding he endured. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he spoke, and with every word, the owl listened carefully, her wings wrapped tightly around him like a blanket. When Fluffy finished, trembling with emotion, the owl leaned in close and whispered softly, "You deserve so much more, little one. You deserve kindness, love, and joy." With those words, she spread her strong, comforting wings wide and gathered Fluffy into them. "Come with me, my dear," she said, her voice steady and protective. "I'll take you somewhere safe." For the first time, Fluffy felt hope bloom in his heart. He nestled into the owl's soft feathers as she took off into the sky. Together, they soared high above the meadow, the burrow, and the cold, uncaring Mr. and Mrs. Hopper. the owl carried Fluffy to a cozy cottage nestled in a quiet forest full of tall, whispering trees. Inside, the cottage was warm and welcoming, filled with the scent of wildflowers and honey. "This will be your new home," the owl told Fluffy, her voice glowing with affection. "Here, you will always be loved and cared for." And she meant every word. The owl became like family to Fluffy, filling his days with laughter, warmth, and tummy-filling feasts. There were toys in every corner, games to play, and stories to enjoy before bedtime. Most importantly, there was love, showered upon Fluffy like the gentle rain that waters a thirsty flower. Each night, the owl wrapped her wings around Fluffy and told him stories of wondrous places. Tucked safely against her feathers, Fluffy grew to believe that the world was a kind place after all. The hurt and loneliness he once carried slowly faded like a bad dream, replaced with peace and happiness. Though his new life was full of joy, Fluffy never forgot the kind owl who had saved him. "You are my angel," he'd say to her softly before bed. And in her eyes, he saw warmth that spoke only of love, never of pain. Fluffy's days were now brighter than the sunniest meadows, filled with boundless adventure and cozy moments of care. He had finally found what he had yearned for all along, a home filled with love, laughter, and someone who truly cherished him. And as the stars began to twinkle one by one, Fluffy drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a tomorrow as beautiful as his heart had always hoped it could be. The end.